Hello, welcome to this week's Fatherly Insights Growing with a Family. This week we kind of do things a little bit different. We're in a different setting of the house. We're going to try to sit a little bit more comfortably. We're going to try to go over some topics that are a little bit different than what we've been talking about. So far, we've been talking about the family as we grow together. Well, in our path of growing, we've kind of struggled through what I've been diagnosed with as PTSD. And my PTSD is a little bit different. It's from years of kind of watching people die around me and not being able to express anything because I had to continue to provide care for other people. It's not so much one event, but it's a series of events that occur throughout my life. And it kind of pays off of kind of my childhood and some other things that happened. But in the long run, what really caused it was I suppressed a lot of feelings for many years. And then as I suppressed them, they kind of reframed my brain or reshaped my brain into like being constantly on a watch or on alert. And then from there, it really didn't. It was something I was trying to manage for a very long time, for many years. I just kind of suppressed all those feelings, right? So last year, I started like my retirement process for the military, and during that process, I was starting to see a psychiatrist, and she started like challenging those thoughts. And this time, I decided instead of like trying to go into retirement with these feelings that I've been trying to suppress, I would actually challenge them too. And in doing so, my symptoms got a lot worse and I got admitted to the hospital from trying to focus on those feelings. So after we came back home, there was a little bit of adjustment period, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about is the adjustment period. So would you like to start from there?
So Brian had we had just dropped we had just dropped Brian's mom off at the airport. She had been here for a few days and I think I was just gonna drop him off at work for whatever reason. And so we were on base and then he, tells me, I think I need to go to the hospital. And so I was like, okay. And so while we're sitting in the parking lot, he's looking very vague. There was a whole lot of expression on his face, other than he could just kept telling me, um, he just kept telling me that the thoughts in his head were not matching reality, and they thought maybe something was wrong, and then he just wanted to go get checked out, make sure, um, you know, he just needed to go get checked out. So of course, like my heart is going like 100 miles a minute, and I don't know really like what I'm supposed to do other than support him. So I left him there and I went home thinking, in a couple hours I'll go pick him back up. And then he called to let me know that they were admitting him. Um, and so it makes sense. He has struggled for years and just kind of ignored it. I would say like he's never had emotions. He's just always been flat. Um, and so I knew that him going was probably a really good thing. And being alone with the kids was not a new concept for us. We've done it for 20 years. So that part did not bother me. I think it was just more, I couldn't be there. I couldn't fix this. It was definitely something that all he could do was work through himself. Um, and so I think it was just a mix of emotions, ones that were, you know, I was optimistic, but scared. And um, yeah.
Yeah. So to kind of give you like the idea of what was going on in my head at that time, I was dealing with some dissociations. I was really living in the past a lot at that moment. We started like opening up those boxes in therapy, and then as I was opening up those boxes, they just overwhelmed my whole life at that moment. And part of that's because I never dealt with it before. So instead of it just being one thing at a time, it was a whole flood of experiences that I've gone through. You've watched so many people get their arms and legs blown off, or you watch so many people die in front of you from infections or injuries, and you know, it just kind of adds up over time. And I couldn't sort out my thoughts, so I was constantly going through these things, and then I was having added pressure from work. The military kind of does that to you. They want things done. They kind of add this pressure to there. And I just didn't feel like I could trust myself at work to not have a, it wasn't any type of violent thoughts, but I just couldn't trust myself not to have like a emotional breakdown at work. So that's when I kind of went, hey, this isn't right. This isn't who I am. And I don't feel like I can do this by myself. So I went in to seek help. So I went to inpatient here at the hospital I was actually working at, which was a little bit different. Sorry, there's a lot of cuts in this video. The reason why there is so many cuts because this is a lot of hard things to say, and it's hard to say it in a way that actually makes sense to the rest of the world. After I left the facility, there was still a lot of work that needed to be done, and I was never going to go back to my old normal. I did not want to go back to my old normal. I didn't want to be someone who suppressed all my feelings in order to prevent myself from having emotional issues. So as I was coming home, we were looking for our new normal, and that's kind of like where Christina really was supportive and kind of helped me along the way. And we had to change some things. And Christina, what were some of those things that you felt like we needed to change?
I think the biggest one was like the tone of our house. I don't even know if like tone is the right word, but just like the volume of it. So, when you have 7 kids and you've got animals and you've got people in and out, like it's a loud house and it's a very open spaced house. It's very, and so things travel. There's not a whole lot of walls to cut the noise, and so the loud noise really kind of affected him. So it was really just trying to develop like a new sense of like, don't holler for your brother and your sister from across the house. Like, go find them. Really just trying to limit the loud noises. That was the main one. And the one that we probably struggle with the most still to this day. Really because that stuff has never been, the loudness of the house has never affected me. And so I've always just let the kids, speak the words that they got to speak and not be um, super stressed out by the noise of it. And so I was able to really like tune it out. So that one was probably the biggest and probably the hardest one to change. Um, Everything else, other than just trying to be more vigilant and more um, recognize that, emotionally, Brian was probably going to be there. Yes, it was hard, but at the same time, it was very similar to when he had been on deployment or overseas or on a TDY and he came back and like reintegrated into the family. Um, and so there was that piece of it. And then, he was gone to appointments. So some of the appointments were pretty intense. And so when he'd come home, he probably was, gone out emotionally, physically for a few hours. And so just trying to allow him the space to just kind of, recover, and then come back. And I didn't feel like there was too many like eggshell walking opportunities. Really because it wasn't, his PTSD wasn't anger or violence or anything like that. And so it was much just more emotional. And so just being more emotionally aware, where he was like mentally, um, just checking in with him more often, kind of like you would a teenager in that sense of like, how are you feeling today? How are your thoughts? Um, because we have done that.
A lot of the emotions were kind of like when you're a teenager, you just don't know how to like handle emotions. But at the same time, it was far different. I
Hmm.
was reliving moments that were very sad and just devastating in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about combat injuries and watching people die alone and hundreds of miles away from their home, and it just things that I hope no one would ever have to see on a regular basis, or we dealt with that almost daily. And then it kind of give you a little bit of insight to what PTSD is like. The best way to kind of describe it is it rewires your brain to constantly be in a fight or flight mode. So the yelling, well, my trauma was not as directly related to the yelling, it triggered that fight or flight mode, which would then turn around and trigger emotions, and then triggering those emotions, they would overlap a lot. So I had to like re-separate everything. And the only way I was going to do it this time was to go through it instead of trying to avoid it or trying to do distractions. One of the biggest strategies I used over the years was really getting to work. I would spend hundreds of hours sometimes in a 2 week period at work or doing stuff for work just to avoid emotions, which made me less present at home, which made it harder to be a father I wanted to be. So going through this journey and going through this path, it's been a big moment for the family and it's been helping me grow. And then the other thing she talked about was walking on eggshells. So that's a common saying for a lot of people. But she was saying there was no this huge anxiety that everyone felt like they had to change the way they were in order to accommodate for me. But at the same time, they wanted to respect me and they wanted to adjust so that I could be more comfortable in my home so that I can have a safe place. And I think the one thing she's not talking about that probably bothers her the most is the meditation time. Um, I went through a transcendental meditation course through the army, and it was a great experience. And it taught me how to like calm my brain and how to like settle things down. But there is times where she thinks I do it a little too often, you know, or maybe for a little
Because I
too
would
long.
maybe start as meditation and turn into a 2, 3 hour nap.
Yes, I do tend to fall asleep when I'm meditating. But at the same time, it was
And
extremely helpful and it helped me wake up a little bit refreshed. It helped reset that
he
fight or
doesn't do
flight
it as
cycle.
much anymore. In the beginning, he did a lot more, not so much.
I face a lot less triggers. I'm no longer in the hospitals, seeing patients, going to patients' rooms, reliving those moments. I spend a lot more time teaching in the last year than I have anything else. I mean, even shaving was a trigger for a long time because that signified me going to work to face those traumas over and over again. And just being able to grow a beard now, it's been one less trigger each day that I kind of go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to shave again pretty shortly here until I'll process. But after that, I hope I don't have to shave ever again.
I mean, just to clean it up.
I like the Grizzly Adams look. She does not.
It's fine. It's fine. I can look past it.
I hope so.
You have other questions?
So you're kind of explaining what it's been like when I first got back and how the different changes, especially the volume of the house, is one area where we had to improve upon. What's the pattern of growth that you've seen? What was your moments of hope that things were going to be better?
What is the one treatment that you did? It was like 5 days a week where you sat in the chair with the electrodes. It wasn't really electrodes, it's magnetic.
Are you talking about TMS?
Yes, that one.
Transcranial magnetic
So that one,
stimulation.
I remember when he said he was going to do that one, I was like so thrown because you hear about like electric shock therapy, and that is kind of like where my brain went.
There is no electrical shocks involved with it.
So I thought for sure like he was going to be going in and like having electric shock therapy. But I did do my research and he brought me home like after the first episode or the first treatment, like he brought me home a pamphlet so I could see what it was. And so then it made more sense. But he did that one. Um, and I think out of all the treatments he's done from, like talk therapy to medication, this was the one that I saw a significant difference, like almost immediately. Because he would come out of it and he was goofy and he was funny and he was like Brian prior to the military or, you know, 14 years ago. Um, and so I think when he started with that treatment is probably when I realized like, you know, this journey will get there. A lot of the other ones, though they're very important, they're very exhausting. And so he would go to them, but then he was doing talk therapy, it was very emotional. And so then he would be tired and then he'd come home and he would sleep and really didn't know how much of that was, like, is this just making things worse? When he was doing the TMS, there was significant change. And he did that twice since he's been home. He did like his initial and then he did like a refresh. And it was fun. He was able to take all three older kids and myself went and watched the treatment as he sat in a chair for like what 15, 16 minutes.
Something like that.
And so we just got to talk with him. It kind of was fun because it was like a mini date, 5 days a week, because that's how often you have to go. And so there's a coffee shop at the main entrance of the hospital. So we'd get coffee and go up to his treatment and then come home. And so that was kind of like a fun thing to do. Um, but that there was the hope. And so like seeing his growth over the like last year, he's definitely like more up. The whole family is probably more emotionally aware of everyone's feelings and our thoughts and how we make other people feel, or how our words can have an effect on how other people feel. Um, because one of the biggest thing was like, you know, I can't control how you feel, but I could see where something I say or something I do may have an effect on how you perceive it and how you feel. Uh, So that was one. But seeing him really after, he spent this whole year writing a book and working, but really when he was able to just, probably since really Christmas, stay home and not have to shave and I have to put that uniform on every day. I've definitely seen like a much more relaxed, fun Brian. I will say the first 2 months was definitely an adjustment. I like being home all day without him. Now I would not change it. Now I'm like, okay, so what are you gonna do? Because it is fun having you home and the kids enjoy you being home, but the beginning was an adjustment. Um, but I think now like we really prioritize like that date night on Fridays to just kind of just reconnect and see where each other are for the week. Neither one of us are just sitters, and so we have like a ton of projects always going at a time, and so it's just a great time to be able to check in on those and then just check in on like how we're feeling. Um, like our morning coffees are a great one. Him riding or taking kids to school or events. I mean, that's been great to be able to see, and just really not be stressed out. The only stressors he has are the ones that he creates himself, or the kids create around him, but nothing that's really out of his control is affecting him. So that's been
It's,
a great thing.
dealing with the trauma was a great thing in the sense that I can finally do the things that I've been wanting to do, the things I've been talking about, the 7 habits. I could fully be engaged with them now because I'm not having this overarching events that are constantly happening in my head, just bringing me back down to
Mhm.
an older level. Now, I still do struggle. I still have my moments,
Oh, yeah.
and they still can be pretty debilitating in the sense that they can drain me real quickly.
So for years, we've always made the rule that Brian does one fair a year. And I think we've now changed that rule to zero. We went to a church event, and mind you, I don't think any of us in the car had an idea of the magnitude of that event. When you hear a church is throwing, um, like an Easter event, and they're just going to be like bounce houses and food trucks, like you think like a low scale. This was not low scale. Like this was larger than a carnival and just full of probably like 40 different bounce houses. And it had like actual carnival rides and then it had food trucks. It was massive.
So
Which
being dozens, those hundreds.
yes, and which is great. Like I love to see events turn out like that. But that I love to see events turn out like that, but that was insane. And so as we're pulling up, Brian's like, I was not mentally prepared for this. So our children were they were not prepared. Brian was not prepared. But we were meeting Leviticus's girlfriend's family, and I remember we're standing and we are looking at waiting in line for his ride, and uh his girlfriend's sister was like, I don't think he's okay. And Brian is like standing there, like hyper vigilant, like frozen, like just looks terrified. And where his girlfriend's mom like leans over and goes, "What's the chances of you joining us again?" And he was like, "Nope, not doing this." But it's instances like that, like where we see Brian, we're at some place and he's just hyper vigilant of like what is going on. He tries to focus in on the kids, which then is a lot, is getting to be worse because they're older and they're independent and they're going different places. Kids are like herding cats. And so he did have to find himself like a spot of the park where he could still see things, but our kids went to the back corner and say they were on a ride, so he was able to stand on the other side where there was like not hundred of people that he was like focusing in on, and there was nobody behind him. Um, but like in that moment was like, okay, like we know this is probably gonna be too much for you, so we don't need to do fairs. Like that can be a mom thing, or if you want to join, or I think had he been mentally prepared for it, we could have made adjustments. Like we are training our dogs um, for like PTSD dogs, just so like if we're in a place they can take Brian out and just that extra, um, just that extra little bit of like support, I think, for him to know he's not alone. But that event will, I think, stick out in everybody's mind because and that was the first time that we've had somebody that was not in our immediate family recognize like, oh, he is not okay. He was not okay.
Yeah, I mean, the hypervigilance comes from being triggered in that fight or flight. And I constantly had people surrounding me, and I had no like clear path of escape. And those are things that I kind of struggle with because so many times in the traumatic events, I had that feeling of there's no escaping this. You have to be here. You have to support them and help them. Um, you have to be there for the patients. You have to be there for their families. There's a lot of just that feeling going on. So when I get in those environments where I cannot see my escape route, it does trigger me, and it makes it really hard. Um, makes it really hard to like be able to be comfortable in those environments. And then I was not mentally prepared. If I'm mentally prepared, I can do some mental exercises to kind of like everything's going to be okay. This is an expected outcome. There's not. I can find my locations where I can not have people behind me, but still, or I can have that clear path out and still be able to be part of the family in those events. But this time it was just,
Well, when we were pulling up, I was like, "Do you take you home?" And he was like, "No, no, I want to be here. I want to be able to experience it with the kids." But yeah, it was kind of it was kind of funny. I mean, it was funny at the moment just because of the look on his face, and I was like, "Well, you did really well." He's like, "Apparently not, because everybody could tell there was something wrong with me." But I mean, I think he did fine.
and it kind of leads to something that my wife has done, maybe not so much spoken about, but she's being a lot more mindful about when we walk into a restaurant, where is a good place to sit? Because I like to see the doors. I like to see my path out, and I like to be in a place where I don't have people immediately behind me or constantly walking around me. So she's taken a notice of those type of things, and it's helped me be part of it. And she recognizes that there are times where I'm hyper vigilant, where I may be acting like I'm engaged or really not engaged.
Hmm.
And doing so, being able to be more comfortable in those environments, I find myself trying to distract myself less and being more present in those moments, which makes it a little bit better.
Yeah, that is probably another area where I've noticed, I think a lot of times he used like phone games as like a way of just like escaping everything that was going on around him for the last few years. Um, and he doesn't do that as much. And so that's really nice to see is, he's definitely more present when we are at events with the kids or I mean just even at home.
It's amazing when you stop trying to run away from those feelings and you find strategies to adjust to those feelings as they come and don't let them just build up over time. How much less you need those type of distractions to kind of make help you get through the day.
Hmm.
And it allows me to be more mindful. Yeah, so those therapies really did help, and while she may have seen me being drained, I think it's important to recognize that those therapies were more focused on changing my brain again back to
Yeah.
normal. So it was a lot of mental work. It was very draining, but at the same time, it was absolutely necessary. And journey to kind of get back to the new normal. So comparing me to high functioning person with PTSD that wasn't dealing with it to where I'm at now, what do you think the new normal, how would you compare the new normal to the old?
The new normal, um, just more relaxed, like no care in the world, which is kind of hard because we still homeschool, and so I'm like, kids gotta do school, kids gotta do school. And he's like, oh, I wake up at they want, they'll get school done. He's a little bit more like passive, but he's always been a little bit more passive in that sense. Um, well, you're just more, I don't say willing, because even before you would do it, it just may not been as with a joyful heart as it is today. Um, but you definitely have more of like, yeah, I'll go out with you, or I'll take the kids, or I'll I'll run with the boys, or you know. So there is that. Um, I think the kids are definitely feeling like more comfortable in the sense of like we can ask dad to like engage with us more, if it's whether it's like playing a video game or playing chess or playing cards. Um, I know before you always did it before, but now I think you enjoy it. There's a different level of enjoyment on it now. Um, and honestly, like I like where we're at. I like the dynamic of the house, and we may change that as we approach fostering kids, which is something he probably never would agree to before. So, I mean, that's growth. Um, I mean, I think he spent a lot of time this year working, 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 and I think this next year will be just really spent finding this like new healthy norm.
Yeah. I think it's easier to say yes to a lot of those things because one, I don't have the memories that are there.
Hmm.
And two, I'm not facing the triggers every day. So
Right,
I'm not coming home already ramped up.
right.
And I think, well, I found ways to kind of work around my PTSD. It's important to remember that I'll never be able to go back to that full functioning and have this too at the same time.
Oh, absolutely not.
Like that, and call it full functioning because I was always doing way more than I need to do
Hmm.
for the army and other things. And I always was finding myself in the projects. Like I said, that was a huge coping mechanism that I was using, or a defense mechanism, was to get myself so involved in work that I didn't have time to think about things, and then I would kind of put myself in like this burnout state. I don't go through those ups and downs anymore of like being extremely functioning and then turning around and just being so exhausted that I can't really do much.
And that's another big change that we made, was just definitely being so more intentional with our time. Um, and so we will not, like, I refuse to just schedule it to the point where we're just doing nothing but running. Like, we will not go down that path again. Um, Especially after this year of really just trying to adjust, and definitely dive deep into being intentional. But even with like our kids, like our older kids, we've always taught them to not do that to themselves and to say no when you have to. And so, we've seen that with our oldest, we've seen that with Leviticus, and then especially Bailey this last year in school, like she's been able to say, no, I cannot. That is just too much for everything else that I'm doing. um, so that has been great to see. But even for us, our kids still do events. Like we have kids that we do swimming and we do football, and there are seasons. May and June are nothing but swim. And then football season is really, August to November. And so, but they're just seasons, right? We have a whole bunch of other months in the year that um, do not involve running, running, running. Um, but that just then means that Sundays you really don't plan a whole lot. We do church, and then, the afternoon is just free time because, we have football games. Last year we had it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This year it should just be Friday and all day Saturday. But just being able to take a piece of the week that we are like, nope, I'm not doing anything that day. Um, and I mean, there's even been times through this last year where Brian's like, I can't do church today. Like I am white. And so just being able to recognize that, respect that, um and so so just being very much more intentional with our time and being able to say no and not having the guilt feeling of saying no. Um which I don't think I ever do anyways. Like I'm pretty good about I know that's what's best for us, and I know what it's like when we don't say no. But you know, our kids still have fun and they still do events and we still do birthday parties and things like that. And sometimes leading up to a busy weekend, we just mentally tell ourselves like that's going to be a busy weekend. So we need to find time either beforehand or after it to just kind of like regroup and take a little bit to chill.
Yeah, it's a lot easier now that I don't get random phone calls
Mhm.
from the army saying that we need this to be done. And I know you don't have any part of it, but you're the one that needs to do it.
Mhm.
Um, so we can be more intentional with our time. I think that's a great gift. I think that's something that if I had to go back to a high stress environment, I would miss is that being able to be intentional with my time.
Mhm.
And, you know, having a whole lot of money versus like having that ability to enjoy life, it's a really big question in our lives right now. I mean, we have our kids all at ages where they can be very intentional with the things they do and the ways they act, and we can be there to help make those memories. And I'd rather do that than, make an extra $100,000 a year.
Mhm.
So it's really exciting. I mean, will be retired here in less than 90 days now.
That was so exciting.
And And we're trying to find a way where I can stay home and Christina can stay home and we can all be together. And just, I guess
Yeah.
we'll just continue to work towards that.
Yeah. Really no commitment to anything.
So the season was right for my treatment, right?
Yeah.
I was not trying to continue to be in the army. I knew my retirement was coming. I was willing to face those emotions.
Mhm.
So part of the new normal that we're facing then is knowing that retirement's coming and we're trying to adjust to me not being so involved with the army and
Mhm.
being more involved at home and wanting that. And the healing process was so much easier to go through when you didn't have command that was being negative towards you because you were no longer available for what they wanted.
Right. I will say that last year when Brian did go out for treatment, his command was amazing and has been. I mean, I think God planned that out just perfectly because his command has been nothing but supportive, and um, his coworkers, just like his immediate command. Because in the military you have like branches or tiers. But even those guys, the schoolhouse have been just like phenomenal and just making sure that you were okay and just checking in on you and checking in on the family and just making sure that there's nothing we needed. So that's been great to see.
It was the first time where I've been in the army, and it'd be 20 years in July here. First time while being in the army that I had a truly supportive command that
Hmm.
didn't get upset at some point because I couldn't do something they wanted me to.
Yeah.
But they also gave me freedom to expand into the things I'm really good at
Mhm.
and the tools I've created and the things that I was able to do. I mean, we increased our pass rate by 15% over all the other sites combined. Our local sites pass rate increased somewhere around, I think it was around 40%
Mhm.
between one class to the other, and with a lot of the tools that I developed and a lot of the work that the other instructors put in. I mean, I was able to still make a huge impact, but still be supported and not do the traditional uh, rotations of clinicals where I was constantly seeing people that were hurt or injured or dying or, you know,
Hmm.
I think that made a difference. It made a difference because it allowed me to like start working on tools that I could use after I leave the military and not be so focused on just doing what the army wanted, even though I may or may not have been good at it. It kind of gave me a little bit more confidence that I'm going to be okay in retirement.
Oh yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be.
Thank you, Ace, for your support. It's been quite the journey. This last year, facing PTSD for the facing the actual traumas behind my PTSD for the first time had really changed how we approach each other as a family, and we've grown a lot this last year,
Hmm.
and we're starting to like see the dividends of that growth and starting to really enjoy being in the home. I wouldn't suggest anyone wait, 14 years or where it was where I was facing those symptoms before they go get treatment. But at the same time, it's never too late to start the treatment or it's never too late to go out there and find that help that you need. And not everyone's going to be able to get to a good place through the treatment, but it's at least worth trying. And it's worth going out there and especially while your kids are still young, to be able to be part of their lives before they get out of the home.
Hmm.
I really want to thank Christina for sharing her experiences. And thank you for being open and talking about what it's like to find the new normal. So, for any woman out there, any wife out there who is actually going through that moment where they're in that parking lot and they're like, I don't know what to do. What words of encouragement can you give them?
I think you just gotta fall back on the when you got married, right? It's for better for worse, and this may just be a worse um, in that time. Um, and ultimately, at the end of the day, like you want the best for your spouse, you want the best for your partner, um, and so you want to be able to say like, I I I can take care of myself while they take care of themselves, and then we can take care of each other. Because it's just temporary, right? And you can do anything for a short period of time or a temporary time. I look back to just like this last year, just like, the few couple weeks, like the 6 weeks that Brian was away. That was such a short period of time compared to the 14 years that we've been battling this PTSD stuff. And so, it's temporary. Really find a support. And when I say support, like you don't need a support group. Everybody finds their own, but whether that um, is one person that you can talk to, or journaling, or just taking that time for yourself, because you know, sometimes it's not about wanting to share because I don't think I really knew what I wanted to share, but it's just recognizing that, you know, in the end, it was going to be okay. And it was something you needed to do if I wanted you back to reality or back to a normal functioning person. Um, because,
So, having faith in God that He was going to take care of it was a big part of your okayness with me
oh
going.
yeah, most definitely. Everybody's at different walks of life, and so for me, know, God was probably my rock in that of, like I knew regardless, like he wasn't going to leave me, and so I could definitely lean into that of prayer and strength. But there are non-believers, and that's okay. And so I think just being able to have a spiritual, like, higher,
We call it the higher power.
higher power, um, to just be able to lean on. Now, I do suggest God because
Works for us.
it works for us. Um, but, um, but yeah, God, I mean, that was my number one. Um, and we were not very, the only people that really knew Brian was gone to treatment. We did not share with our extended family just because they're so far away. My mom knew because she had come to help with kids. And then, my, our church family.
That really helps with the healing process, knowing that people are not out there just talking or trying to deal with you. I found that just being able to focus on myself and not worry about all the different things that are going on, in Wisconsin, um, was kind of helpful. And I would encourage if you are the family member who's supporting somebody who's going through this, don't go around telling everyone about it.
Yeah.
Allow the person that's going through it be the one to express it when he's ready to express it or they are ready to express it.
And that was the other thing. Like this was, yes, there's a piece of it that was like our story, but there was Brian's story. And so when he went into treatment, we did have a big discussion of like, who are we telling? And we did keep it very small just for that reason. Um, I did not want to be bombarded with people and questions and thoughts and everybody's opinion because everybody has an opinion. But
Yeah, there's still stereotypes out there about PTSD. I mean, you still got those people that think, oh, if you have PTSD, you're obviously unstable or you're
right.
not safe to be around or
And so our church family was great. My mom, and that's really, um, like that was it, right? That's how small we had it for
it
the
wasn't
first little
everyone in
bit.
the church.
Mm-mm, no, um, but our church is small enough that I'm sure by the end everybody figured it out. But was it was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an important thing though. Like, make sure that you learn who is safe to talk to and not who you should tell things to.
yeah,
And making sure that, as a supporter or as the person who's going through it, that you keep it to the safe people and you keep it to an area where you can control, especially during that treatment phase.
because really, like as a wife, you're going through like your own emotions about it. And then just trying to be there to support your spouse. And so you want to just be able to make sure that, anything that's coming in, anything you're taking in is on a positive note, not something that's challenging your thoughts and your feelings. Like that's not what you need at that moment. You just need support. So we are blessed to be on the other side of this where Brian was able to go get help and did go get help when those thoughts were super intrusive. Um, and so it's not something to take lightly on that end. Um, and so if you do have a family member, a spouse that is struggling with PTSD, I do encourage, you know, just talking about it. Start that conversation. They may not be ready today or tomorrow, but if they know that you're willing to support them, I think being able to go get that help is a lot easier knowing that they don't have to worry about you.
Right. This was planting the seeds, right?
Hmm.
And I think one thing people don't really understand is there's a lot of ways you can get that help as an outpatient, especially if you get someone there once or two, and kind of help you through those moments, like kind of pick up the slack as you're exhausted or to give you sometimes it's just getting a ride to and from when I'm feeling emotionally distressed and things like that.
Yeah.
I will say there is no cure for PTSD. I'm always going to have those memories. I'm always going to have those intrusive thoughts. There's always going to be that element of I lived through those times, but with better coping mechanisms, with better skills, I can work through those moments a lot easier. At the same time, it's also important to remember there is a level on which it will become overwhelming if I don't take time and take a break and listen to what my body's telling me and listen to what my brain's telling me. So part of that is just managing it.
Hmm.
We kind of covered a lot of things. We covered a lot about finding the new normal after PTSD treatment started. Kind of a little bit of the journey. There's a lot more details and a lot more things that we could talk about, but we're not going to get into that this time. We talked about, you know, the different types of therapies I went through and the ones that you thought were kind of bringing hope and other ones that you knew that I needed that rest for. And they've been really good about allowing me to have that rest when I need it. I think that kind of wraps things up for this week. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you for taking the time to, if you're someone out there who's suffering with PTSD, when you're ready, go and seek out that help. Don't be afraid to. If you're someone who's trying to support someone who's suffering from PTSD, I mean, know there's hope out there. There are things that can help make things better, or there are things out there that at least help change things to be more normal, you know. And we're constantly praying for and hoping that people with PTSD and people who are going through these type of events do find the help they need and that they do find a better way to live.
I love you, Dad, Dad, Dad. I love my dad, Dad, Dad. I love you, Dad, Dad.
This is our dog Ace. He's our guest this week.
He's our guest this week. They're your guests this week. You have two guests.